Well, welcome to the Dean Speaker Series. This month we are talking all about forensic science. And today we have 5 of our alumni who have graduated from our program starting at 2014 all the way up to this year, 2023. So I'm going to start out having them just introduce themselves, their name, where they work, how they got to where they are today, and then also what was it that drew you all to forensic science to start with. So Nick, would you like to start us out?
Sure. So answering all of those things? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so good morning. My name is Nick Rubino. I'm a forensic scientist with the City Phoenix Police Department. I started in 2014 in the forensic biology section. And then in 2017, I transferred to the forensic firearms section. So when I first started here at GCU in 2010, the forensic science degree did not exist. When I started pre-med. And I was made aware of a potential forensic science degree coming, and I was interested in that. So when it started my sophomore year, I transferred into that program and graduated with a forensic science degree in 2014. Let's see, I grew up in a law enforcement family. I always was drawn to science. So forensic science was kind of a natural progression for me of applying science to criminal justice or law enforcement. So I had that interest kind of always in the back of my mind. As far as when I started, you'll learn this when you start in the lab. I guess go back a little bit. In my junior year, I was made aware of a internship or volunteering opportunity that a lot of labs have. And I was able to volunteer my whole senior year of school. So if that's something that you guys are able to do, I definitely advocate for it because you get your foot in the door, you get your face there, you meet people, you get to kind of experience all the different sections of what they do and get an interest of what section you might want to work in. And then transitioning to actually hiring. When they hire for positions, it's typically for specific sections. So I don't know if you've been to a lab, but most of the sections in the lab are their own unique entity. It's not like CSI or Bones where I'm doing everything. I'm doing the toxicology, the DNA, the firearms. I'm doing everything. It's very specific. So I'm only doing firearms work. So when you're interviewing for these jobs, you're typically only interviewing that specific section. So if you're going into this thinking, I'm only going to do DNA, you might have that opportunity as far as what you're interviewing for is what you want to do. But a lot of times, in my case as well, you're interviewing for a position and it might not be your number one. And you might end up loving it. You might end up loving the work because you didn't know that much about it and you love it and you're good to go. Or like me, you might have an opportunity to transfer later on in your career if you decide to do that for change of interest or just better opportunities in that section, which is what ultimately why I ended up transferring. So, it's not as easy as, hey, I want to go work in another section. They have to have availability. They have to run a process. So, it takes some time if you do end up wanting to transfer, but that is an opportunity that does exist when you're working in the lab.
And then one thing I want to add really quick is that when you do transfer to a different section of the lab, you're at the same pay level. So you're not going down in pay to a trainee. Alex?
Hi, my name is Alexandra Cuevas, and I work with the Arizona Department of Public Safety. And I am currently in the toxicology unit focusing on blood alcohol and THC identification and then quantification, so finding out how much is in there. So a little bit about my journey. I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do. Probably as a senior in high school, I was like, I like DNA. Or I like DNA and I like science. So I was trying to find out something that I would be able to utilize, what I liked. And so I found, there's DNA in forensic science, but then there's also a whole bunch of other aspects of DNA in research and in medicine. So initially my field or my interest was very broad. Coming here to GCU, I actually enrolled in both the forensic science program as well as the biochemistry and molecular biology program. So that again, I had all of my doors open, depending on where it is that I wanted to go. partway through taking all of my classes, I really started to fall in love with forensic science. And so then I set my goals on working at a department, becoming a forensic scientist. And initially, what I had done was I applied everywhere that I could for every position that was out there, just so that I could get my foot in the door and be able to then move on from there. And I initially was hired with DPS as a laboratory technician. And then I also had applied for an associate position, which later opened up a couple months after I was already hired. However, this was in the toxicology unit that I'm in now, and I was really hesitant. And Scott Rex would know, I was probably about a week going around to everybody asking them questions like, do you think I'm going to like it up there? How is it up there? How is the opportunities to be able to transfer to other units? Because again, at that time, I was like dead set on doing DNA. Turns out, a couple weeks into my training for alcohol, I really enjoyed it. There's a lot of molecular biology stuff that's going on that we're learning about in that training, that I was like, this is also something that I really enjoy. And so now I've been super excited to be working in the toxicology unit and can't wait to continue to learn more aspects of my job and then be able to apply, my previous knowledge to my job now. That's it.
Hello, my name is Leela Yeoman. I graduated in spring 2022. I work at Desert Talks. My career journey, I graduated and then I just applied to pretty much everywhere. I didn't really know what I was going for. I was just trying to get experience, and I ended up getting hired kind of where I wanted to be at the end of my career. I didn't always know I wanted to do forensic science in high school. I didn't even know I wanted to go to college. But I ended up doing a tour of GCU through my high school, and then I ended up just picking forensic science because I liked forensic science, just like science in general, but I didn't want to do pre-med. And I kind of, around sophomore year, I'd taken a few of the forensic classes and I really liked them. But I decided that after crime scene processing, I didn't want to be in the field like that. And after photography, so I added a minor in chemistry here to hopefully better my chances of getting in a lab position. And,
Morning, my name is Karla Villegas. I work for the Police Department Crime Lab. I'm currently a crime scene specialist too. I started December of 2019 and I graduated here in 2019. Prior to working for Phoenix, I was a volunteer for the Office of the Medical Examiner, so I was a forensic photographer there. And then I got hired on for a little bit, for about 3 months, and then while I was getting paid in those 3 months, I actually got hired with Phoenix as that temp job was ending, so everything kind of worked out pretty well for me. I was with volunteer straight to working for Phoenix. I pretty much always knew that I wanted to do forensic science. I always had an interest in law and in medical, but I wasn't dead set on going to law school or medical school. And I feel like for that, you have to be pretty dead set on that early on in your college career, and I wasn't quite yet. But I kind of had a little bit of that CSI effect where you kind of watch those shows and you're like, okay, that's kind of cool. I'm like, it's a mixture of both. But I knew it wasn't going to be exactly like that, right? So I kind of looked into it, and then once I started looking for what colleges I wanted to go to, I saw which ones had the forensic science program, and GCU was one of them, and it was one of the best programs as well. And I also got the most scholarships, so that was kind of a no-brainer for me. So I came here, I loved it, and pretty early on, I knew that this is what I wanted to do. Not necessarily crime scene work. I was like, oh, I'm not sure I really wanted to be in the lab. But once I got into crime scene, I actually really loved field work, and now I don't really want to go into the lab. Maybe when I'm like old and decrepit and I can't really work out in the field anymore, maybe I'll go up to the lab. But so far, I love the field work and it's fun and it's different. Every scene is different, so kind of keeps you on your toes.
All right, so my name is Jesus Padilla. I work with Glendale Police Department. I'm a crime scene specialist as well. I graduated here April 2023 spring, and I started applying probably around like February, March, and I was volunteering with Mesa Police Department with their in the volunteer program, and that really helped me get into Glendale because during the hiring process, I told them like, "Oh, I'm volunteering," and as soon as I said that, I saw them like writing down like, "Oh, where did you want to? Like, what are you doing? What exactly are you doing there?" And that's one thing. How Nick said, I do advocate if you can volunteer, it's definitely helpful. I always knew, well, not always, but like since high school, I knew I wanted to be in forensic science. I know what she said. I used to watch all the shows, and I knew that was something that I had a passion for. And now here I am in the field. I like the field work. Probably later on, I'll get into the lab, but for now, I do enjoy being out in the field. It's always something new. So yeah.
Well, thank you, everybody. So the next question is, how did you find out about opportunities in the area that you're now specialized in? And we'll keep that broad, so that can be volunteering or internships, job posting. Yeah. How did you find out that where you are now really is an option?
As far as volunteering, that was something that Dr. Meadow actually told me about, opportunities that different departments have for volunteering or being an intern. So that was something that I learned about while I was in school. I don't know if the timetables have changed as far as when you can apply to be a volunteer. I think it's like your junior year. So look into that. But the city of Phoenix does have a weekly job list that they do send out that you can subscribe to, that they'll send you new jobs that post. So if you're looking for something specific, you can throw your email in there and they'll do that. But as far as how I learned about my job, I was volunteering already. So it's kind of word of mouth that, hey, there's going to be an opportunity coming up in this section. So, when you're there, you can have the ability to turn out SOPs and talk to people, get insight on questions. So it really is a leg up, not just that you're there, but also on information that you can get on the process.
I would say that my biggest resource was creating a profile with government jobs and like subscribing to every single department that I knew was around here for potential job openings. And then same thing, I would just go and look at websites. I was also looking at hospitals too, just to try to get my foot in the door with some sort of lab experience. And looking directly at the hospital job listings and seeing what they have there and apply as well.
Yeah, I kind of did the same thing. I have profiles for a bunch of different web pages, LinkedIn, government jobs, Indeed, which is where I actually found the job. I was just looking at chemistry, forensic science, pretty much anything to get some experience. Yeah, I kind of found my job just out of pure luck. I didn't even know lab existed. That's pretty small, so I'd never heard of it. So I just ended up getting an Indeed message one day. I went.
So with the medical examiner, it was kind of word of mouth because a lot of the seniors in my class volunteered there, and they pretty much, well, if you're in the program, like they know GCU is a pretty credible program, so they'll more than likely, if you don't have crazy background or anything like that, we'll have you as a volunteer. So that's how I learned of that. And I also had a friend that was already volunteering there, and then I got lucky and got the forensic photography, which is a really small unit. And then with Phoenix, I had already started applying my senior year of college. So I was kind of applying to everything like evidence custodian, anything like that to get in the foot in the door. I was looking at like hospitals and medical labs and stuff like that. And then also there's a site called Crime Scene Investigator Network, which they post weekly jobs on there. And it tells you, the salary, when the application closes, what the requirements are, benefits. That's how I found out about Phoenix, and then I applied, and then here I am.
For me, probably volunteering with Mesa. They were the ones who told me that Mesa was gonna have a job opening, and then me going into every police department and seeing if they had any openings. And then the Facebook group that Dr. Beto runs listed like some every job opening on there. That also helped. So
Thank you. I didn't have to do a shameless plug for our Facebook group where we post jobs and internships. So next, tell us about some of the challenges that you faced on your path to where you are. That could be looking for jobs or interviewing or even during your time here at GCU. Kind of what were some of the roadblocks that you ran into and how did you work past those?
I'd say for most people, it's just finding an opening, especially if you're looking for one specific to a section. That can be probably one of the more challenging aspects. The other, for a lot of folks in this discipline, is just interviewing. A lot of people in this, in the world of science are very smart and they have a hard time articulating responses in an interview setting. So definitely, if that's something that you might fall into, take classes, get better. It's something that you're going to have to do throughout your career.
I would have to agree with what you were saying there. Definitely waiting around for a job to actually then contact you, because a lot of the times it was, okay, this closes and within 3 months we may contact you. And so then you're waiting around and you don't know when that's going to happen and if it's going to happen. And then the next thing was, as far as interviewing, I don't like to talk about myself. And I'm up here talking to you guys about myself, but I don't like it. So that part was definitely something that took some getting used to, which definitely helped again with applying to a whole bunch of places, because the more interviews you get, the more practice you're getting, being able to confidently speak about yourself.
Pretty much had the same challenges. I was getting a lot of interviews, but each one was like, you went to one interview and then they wanted you to go to the second one, or they didn't want you back. And so each one was like spaced a month apart. So you'd be like going through months and months, and then to get rejected at the end, it's been like 3 months. It was kind of frustrating. Another challenge probably would be that during my junior year, that was the pandemic. So there wasn't really any volunteering or anything because they didn't want people coming to volunteer or like intern or anything like that. Just many interviews that led to that.
You have to agree with everybody. So I started off applying everywhere and anywhere, and I wouldn't even call back, and I'm like, great, amazing, that's lovely. And then finally I applied to Phoenix, and I was like, I don't even think I qualify for this job. And I was like, well, I'll just apply anyways. We'll see where it goes. If it's a no, it's a no. And I ended up getting an interview. So even if you think that you don't qualify for a job, do it anyways, because you might be the only applicant or the only applicant too. But I think another challenge was definitely the public speaking. It's definitely not my forte, and I think the public speaking class that we had to take actually was very helpful in that sense. And then also with the program, we had to do the court, we had to do the mock courts. So that definitely helped me with that. And then resume building, make sure to build your resume. I think they have workshops here. I'm not sure if they still have workshops. So if you can attend those, definitely do that. Volunteer, do like any of the clubs, like the Forensic Science Club, that's still going. Forensic Science Day, so anything that you can use to build your resume, research, anything like that, is definitely going to help you.
I would have to say interviews as well, just because I'm not one to like sell myself to the people there. And I'm more of just like, oh, I'll just hold off. And I was just getting told, no, you have to tell them everything, just sell yourself to them. And I'm like, well, I don't know. But I guess, yeah, that was one of the hardest things for me. Other than that, just all the no's and all the, you don't have enough experience. I'm like, well, how am I gonna get experience if you don't wanna hire me? But yeah, I would say that was one of the challenges for me.
I have to agree, because I got a lot of no's and I actually have a folder in my office of all of my rejection letters. And it's literally 6 inches thick. It is just rejection after rejection, or you're on the list, we'll call you sometime, maybe. But just putting your resume out there as much as you can, that's really the best way to go. But next, what do you all like the most and like the least about working either in the lab or in the?
So working in the firearms section, for me, that was like the perfect meld of interests outside of work as well as interests in work. It was a fun combination of learning about things that I'm interested in, not only just for work. I love the mechanical aspect of the job as well. Like I love taking things apart, putting them together. So being able to do that and get paid for it was, in my opinion, was awesome. So that's probably one of the things I love. I also love the variety of the work that we get. Coming from a DNA section where, for me personally, it was a little bit robotic and it was a little bit monotonous of the day in and day out work. I was doing the same thing every week. Where firearms, you're getting new guns, you're getting new ammunition, you're getting different guns in different conditions, things are broken, you have to fix them. So the variety of the work that I see on a day-to-day basis is different every day. What I like the least, occasionally we do things called distance determinations where we have to do muzzle to target analysis. And sometimes those garments that we get to do that analysis on are in horrific condition. So it's a mess. It's, as you would imagine, there's, bloody garments. And so dealing with that mess is sometimes a pain, but I wouldn't say I hate it. It's just part of the job that you deal with.
I would say that the part that I like most about my job is just being in the lab, which is why I was really excited when I went and started training in another assay and learning THC instead of just blood alcohol, because again, now I get to have more opportunities in the lab. Something that I like the least, I would say, is paperwork. You don't understand how much paperwork you have to do, but there is a lot of paperwork. So just an example, an alcohol batch, I have 40 cases in it, and each case is ran twice. So now that's 80 pieces of paper just looking at that data, and let alone all of my calibrators, controls, and everything else that's associated with it. And that's only half of it, because there's a whole other administrative side. So definitely.
My favorite part about the job is that since I work in a small lab, everyone kind of does everything. So I'm able to kind of see the whole big picture. So I'm not just doing lab work, I'm also accessioning the specimens and doing the initial testing and the confirmation, which is really cool. Another thing that's really cool about working in a small lab is that when something doesn't work, we can kind of veer off and try to fix the problem. So with that, I've changed the columns and some of our instruments. And I've also done some other maintenance that I probably wouldn't be able to do somewhere larger. The challenge of the job, probably just when you're accessioning specimens, they spill and there's stuff everywhere. So sometimes that can be a little bit annoying to clean, but otherwise it's really fun.
What I like about crime scene work is that it's different every single time. The methods and the procedures might be the same, but one day I can be going to a sex assault, one day I can be going to a homicide. So it's very different in what you do. And then your scenes can, range from a couple hours to 20 hours. So sometimes you don't really know what you're getting yourself into until you're there. So if you get bored easily, this is a great job to get into because it's going to be different every single time. One thing that I dislike, sometimes the things that we get into, so the porterhouses are not fun. So the environmental factors of all that. So, you're in people's homes, which cannot be in the best conditions sometimes. So you have cockroaches, bugs, the worst ones are bed bugs. So stuff like that. And And then, the bodily fluids when you're dealing with dead people, of course. So sometimes that stuff is not fun. And then you get stuff like sometimes you get to be on cherry pickers. So like fire department will come out, you'll have to go and, photograph bullet holes on buildings. So that's kind of cool. Or you'll be on a roof trying to retrieve a gun. So it's just different every single time. And sometimes those environmental factors, like also the heat is not fun, but that's why I work night shifts.
One thing I enjoy about being a crime scene type would be just me knowing that I'm going out to process a scene, and hopefully with my work, we're able to catch whoever did this crime. One thing I don't like is the call out schedule they have, because I could work like my normal shift from 7 to 5, and I go home ready to like relax, and then at like 8, I get called back out if I'm on call, which happened to me. I worked my 7 to 5, and then I was like, okay, I'm gonna go home and relax or whatever. Get called out at 8, and I didn't get back home till 4 in the morning. So I worked like 16 hours that day. So that's the one thing I don't like, but it's not the worst, I guess.
The money's good though, right? Like in that paycheck. Okay, so next we want to hear kind of your thoughts about forensic science as a customer service industry, because I think a lot of people don't realize how much customer service goes into working in a lab or at a crime scene. So kind of what are your thoughts on that, and how do you consider, or I should say, what do you consider as successfully serving the client?
In my opinion, successfully serving the client is just performing the best forensic analysis that you can on the evidence, and then delivering those results, conclusions in a clear and concise way that your customers can understand. There might be instances where your customers might not like the answer that you give them based on your results, and to provide the best service that we can is just to report those results to what we found, and it is what it is. That's what I saw. This is my conclusion, and here's why.
As far as the customer service aspect, I would agree with that. Sometimes you get officers who aren't exactly the most happy with the results. But again, just like going into the lab every day and following your SOPs and making sure that you're doing like the best forensic work that you can for everyone. And something you don't really think about is that not only are you having officers and prosecutors, both defense and or for your prosecution and for defense. Not only do you have all of them as your customers, but you also have the person who has been affected by this, or somebody who's been pulled over for a DUI, somebody who is part of a crime. They're also your customer as well. So getting into the lab every day and making sure that you're performing your best is definitely something to consider with the customer service aspect. And then you don't really necessarily know how much you talk with other people, but I have emails every single day that I have to go through, and I'm constantly on the phone with either prosecution or defense because they have questions. And so then there's a teaching aspect to this job. Not only are you conveying your results, but then you're also teaching the people you're communicating with about what it is that you're doing on a daily basis.
So for my job, we don't just do criminal cases. We do a lot of pre-employment random testing just for like different companies. So the companies are kind of like our clients. And something about the small lab is that we want to get high turnover. So we want the results out quickly and accurately. So we try to get them out within 24 hours of when we receive them at the lab. So usually if we have a conversation with a client or something, it's about the lab results not coming out as quick, especially for post accidents. They want the result either out as positive or negative quickly because they have to pay that individual until they get the result. So the company doesn't want to keep paying an employee for extended period of time if they don't have to. So we just have to do. And we also have retests. So those are like people don't agree with their original result from another lab, so then they send them to our lab, and they also want those out in a time manner with a clear lab report within 24 hours.
So going into this job, I didn't even think of it as a customer service job, but it very much is. Like my first day of orientation with the city of Phoenix, they were like, customer service, customer service. I'm like, what is going on? So I'm like, I worked customer service since I was 16. I was like, I don't want to do it anymore. But it very much is. So don't think that your serving jobs or retail jobs will not come in handy later, because they definitely do. I've definitely kept a lot from, my serving days at Olive Garden and my retail work. So you'll definitely use those in the future. But for us as pregnancy specialists, our customers are the people of the city of Phoenix. So whether it's a victim or suspect, we're serving both. And we're just there to collect the evidence and document it and nothing else. We're not there to judge or anything like that. So we have to be impartial. Also, the people across the street at the headquarters, all the detectives, sergeants, lieutenants, whether we're working with homicide or, assaults, anything like that, they're our customers as well, because we're the ones that are assisting them with the scenes. And then even the forensic scientists upstairs, because we're collecting and documenting their evidence. And they're the ones that are testing it. So we have to make sure that we're doing it correctly for them as well.
I definitely do agree with her. For us, it's obviously the city, the people of Glendale. So when I go out, I definitely try to give it like my 110%, just 'cause I don't want to make a mistake that can turn a case go differently later on. So definitely, I didn't really think it was really too much of like customer service as well. But as you get into it, you start realizing, okay, yeah, there's a lot to it. But
Thank you. So kind of based on what some of you said, we're going to go a little bit off script here. And talk about the science aspect of what you do. Because I know for the toxicologist, it's a little more obvious that there is that clear science aspect that you mentioned earlier in biology and biochemistry. But for firearms and crime scene, the science aspect is not as obvious to a lot of people. So how do you really handle that when people question either the science behind what you're doing, or if there is any science related to what?
I think so. So firearms right now, I'd say, is being challenged a little bit as far as admissibility in court. We are seeing some people challenging our conclusions as well as how we come to those conclusions. So when we're making an ID, we're saying that a cartridge case or fired projectile is from a specific firearm. We're actually looking at a lot of the machining marks that have been utilized to manufacture the firearms. So being a firearms examiner, obviously the science plays a big role, but there's also a lot of knowledge of mechanical processes. So we tour manufacturing facilities. We look at the tooling pieces themselves and how these individual characteristics are introduced to these work surfaces and how we can utilize those for individualization. So that's a big part of the job outside of just science. It's having that mechanical aptitude that definitely helps understand the moving pieces and parts that allow us to say what we're saying. There's also a lot of chemistry that goes into firearms as far as chemicals and propellants and the projectiles and the lead that composes the core of a projectile, the jacket material. There's a lot of things that you don't think about when it comes to firearms and science and chemistry that we really get into the nitty-gritty of it. We do some color tests, so some chromophoric tests. I think one that's common is Castlemeyer, but we also do some chemical tests for various chemical components or residues that are created during the discharge of the firearm. But yeah, I'd probably say more chemistry based than biological in some of the other sections.
So for us, we kind of have to know a little bit about every single section. So we have, firearms, latents, DNA, evidence processing. So we have to know how to be able to document and package and collect every single type of evidence that we have. Just because we're the first ones on scene and we're the first ones in contact with it. So a lot of the times, we do have to use like chemical processing depending what we have. So if we see a stain somewhere, we're not kind of sure if that's blood or not. that's when we use like stuff like Casamide. If you have bloody shoe prints, you want to be able to enhance them. So we have things like crystal violet. So we have a lot of different chemicals as well that we have to know how to use. There's a certain order that you use them in. And then you also have to kind of incorporate that in with your methodology of like what order you have to use the chemicals, and then, you know, incorporate your photography and your other scene work. So there's definitely a lot of chemistry as well that goes into it, as well as like the physical aspect of it.
Okay, cool. Awesome, thank you. So we have a wide variety of students here. Some are just starting out, and so they're not sure really if forensic science is where they should be. At the same time, we have some seniors who are going to be graduating 10 or 11 weeks that are for sure set on this field for their career. So what are words of wisdom that you have for them? Again, both those who are not sure if this is what they want to do, and for those that are sure that this is what they should be doing.
For those who are just starting, I'd say if you have an opportunity to talk to people who are working in the field, get their opinion on sections, on their day-to-day job. If you can, maybe you can go spend a day at the lab and shadow or sit and witness or take a tour of certain lab facilities, call, see if you can do that, but just get your foot in the door and see what a day-to-day looks like. I know everyone watches CSI and all these shows, but that isn't quite transparent or true to what a day-to-day is. So get an idea of what that is. Talk to people who actually work in the field and do the job and what their pros and cons are. But yeah, people who are a week out from graduation, you know, congrats, nice job. But yeah, if you're not volunteering or interning, I would say do that now. You know, really get your foot in the door, because that'll help tenfold in the hiring process. It really is a leg up in the game as far as getting hired. If you don't have that opportunity, just apply for as much as you can. Like a lot of people here on the panel said, like, don't be overly picky on getting your foot in the door and getting some experience.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Ask all the questions. Again, Scott Rex, he used to call me the Riddler because I was always asking questions like every single day at lunch. I would see him and I would have like 10,000 questions to ask him. So use your resources. You have Melissa here, who's an awesome resource. You now have Scott over here, who is also another great resource to be using. Ask the questions if you have any curiosity. And then again, once you're in the job, continue asking questions. Maybe you applied to be in the lab, but you really want to go into like a forensic services technician spot where you're out at the crime scene, or vice versa. Maybe you want to go from being outside of the lab to going inside of the lab. And then something else that I would say too is don't limit yourself. Definitely apply everywhere. Don't limit yourself. I remember a conversation that I had with Beto when I first came to GCU was she was talking about a student who was dead set on being in the DNA lab at Phoenix, and it was years. And I don't even know if she doesn't have the job. So like, don't close yourself off to one specific thing. Open yourself up, be open to everything, and just be inquisitive, because you never know what it is that you'll find that actually sparks your interest.
Kind of going off what they said is don't limit yourself, is join the Forensic Science Society. I think they have like lab tours and other things and like little like experiments that you can do to get yourself immersed with the field. And then also is while you're here is don't be afraid to challenge yourself. I took on a chemistry minor and did analytical chemistry, which was not on the typical course path, and it was hard, but I think it helped during interviews and understanding everything for my job now.
For those that are just starting, if you're not sure about forensic science, I think the program itself is a great way for any type of job, because you have a background, you do have that chemistry background, and so you're able to pretty much get anywhere, like in any lab. So it's not a terrible, I think, major to do, as well as it kind of makes you stand out, especially if you want to go to med school or anything like that, because all they're going to see is pre-med, right? And then they're going to see forensic science and be like, oh, that's different. But you do have those requirements of like the chemistry and all that as well that they have. And then for those that are set, I would say, yeah, volunteer, have a good reputation with your professors, like Melissa wrote a letter of recommendation for me. So go to those office hours, build reputations with all of your professors, not just the forensic science ones, even that class that you take from me was organic chemistry. So build it with everybody, so that when your senior year does come, you're not like, oh shoot, like I don't have anyone that can write me a letter of recommendation. So definitely start building up that reputation with everybody as well.
I would agree with that. Definitely for those who are starting out, go talk to your professors, see what they have to tell you. I know I talked to Beto, I talked to Webb as well. She told me a lot about crime scene. And then for those who are not that, well, for those who are just starting, definitely get involved as well. Try to get into a research program if you have the ability to, get the time. Get in, volunteer, that'll help you as well. And for those who are almost going to graduate, definitely, if you have your volunteering, add that. Any recommendation letters as well, stuff like that. Yeah.
Perfect, thank you. So we're going to turn it back to your time here at GCU while you were here. What was your favorite class here? It could be forensic or non-forensic, but really, what was your favorite and why? Why did you enjoy it so much?
I know you just said you hated it, but I think probably my favorite was OChem. To me, it was a challenging class, and it's probably the class that I put the most work into as far as going to after-hour study sessions and getting together with friends in the class and studying. But the way my memory worked and the way, it's like chemical patterns and pattern matching and getting things together, which is funny because now that's what I do is essentially pattern matching. But just the way it worked in my brain, it made sense to me, and it was fun to enjoy it and actually have fun in a class that so many people hated. I don't know, maybe that's why I enjoyed it, but I enjoyed the challenge and I enjoyed the fact that I was successful in figuring it out.
I would say that I had two favorite classes. It was the advanced genetics and then the advanced biochemistry classes. More particularly the labs of those classes, because essentially it's just one big research project throughout the entire semester. So you just had, one objective and you were working on that the whole semester. And so that was really fun just to get that lab experience, because it honestly felt not like you were going to school, but like you were going to work and it's something you enjoyed. So I really liked it. A class though that I definitely didn't enjoy, but I really enjoy the thought of it now, is my instrumental analysis class, because I didn't realize at that time like how cool it was of an opportunity to be able to work on all of the different instruments that you're working on in that class. So if you don't like it, I would take advantage of liking it now.
So my favorite class was instrumental analysis. Everything that I do now, instrumental analysis kind of set a good foundation in how to use all the instruments and how everything works. I really like the class. I really like the lab. The lab was really fun. The lab kind of mimics what you would do as if you're working in a lab, so it's really cool. And then I had a second favorite class, which is my Chem 333 class. I was the only student in that class, and it was just me and Dr. Langley. We had a really good time, and I got a lot of hands-on experience with all the instruments because it was really easy to move the class to a different room. I had a great time in the class.
I'll say it again. I disliked OChem very much. I wanted to love it. I really did. I wanted to understand it, but my brain did not work that way. It just didn't, and I didn't like it. But I really loved the DNA and body fluids class. I liked how we were able to do our own buckles and figure out, which profile was which. Then I also did enjoy instrumental analysis, like the idea of it. But it was maybe not carried out the best way our year, unfortunately, but it was very fun. I did enjoy it, but the idea was great.
I'll have to second that. I definitely did not like OChem at all. It was rough. I spent hours and hours just trying to study and I still didn't get it. I have no clue how I passed, but I understood enough for me to get there. But my favorite classes were probably crime scene processing and physical evidence labs, just because my brain works more trying to like be hands-on. So definitely, like, don't get me wrong, I like the lectures, but labs are better.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna add the DNA and fluid analysis class gave a lot of good experience. When I started my career in serology was doing Christmas tree stains and identification of body fluids and working with the DNA instrumentation. And that class really was at the time, to my knowledge, like the only class or only program that offered a class where you had hands-on experience with equipment that was being used in the lab. So when I went into interview and I talked about all the instrumentation and chemical processes that I had experience with, that was a huge selling point of me being hired with the city of Phoenix.
That's funny because I taught that class and you were the one student in that class.
Yeah.
Yeah, student one. Okay, so if you could have a redo of your time at GCU here, what would you do differently? So in other words, what do you wish you would have done while you were here?
I know that you guys have talked about like there being like a GCU, I don't know, like a forensic science club that might be a little more involved now. And that was something that really wasn't going when I was a student. So maybe taking more initiative back when I was here and setting something up or having a forensic science club when there wasn't one, but now it sounds like there is. So it's a cool opportunity for those of you who have, but maybe I'll do that a little different.
I would agree. I would probably attend a little bit more meetings of that, just because I do know like they would go out and do lab tours and everything like that. Unfortunately, I had a couple jobs on the outside of class that I had to attend to, so I didn't have that opportunity. But if I could go back, I definitely would be a little bit more involved in that forensic science club.
If I were to go back, I would get to know the forensics professors better my freshman year because Dr. Better helped me redo my schedule, but it was already sophomore year, so my junior year was already due. At that point. So I would definitely get to know the faculty and the professors better to help you kind of lay out your schedule and kind of decide on when to take them and who to take.
I totally forgot about that. I remember Leela sitting in my office and I was like,
I would probably go to office hours more, especially for OChem. I tried and I didn't want to. So I would definitely have done more office hours. I did do like the night studies that Dr. Grove would put on, but office hours could not do it. So I wish I did more of that just in general for all of my classes. And then also I wish I did less 7 a.m.s.
I do wish I would have joined the forensic science club, just because I heard many good things about it. But I also wish I would have started my volunteering at Mesa or anywhere before, like sooner. So I started towards like the end of February, I believe. So I didn't really have too much experience there. So that's one thing I definitely would change.
okay, so do you have any advice for anyone here that we haven't really already discussed? So it could be tips for success, classes to take, really anything else that you want to add in that maybe we didn't have an opportunity to earlier.
Sure. Usually you always say this is our, for those of us at the lab who give college presentations, we always say this is our soapbox, but just be cognizant of the decisions you guys are making when you're in college as they may impact the potential career that you might walk down the road. So whether you're doing, out at parties or what you're posting on social media, just be cognizant that it can impact your careers. Okay. The other side was take public speaking courses, take Toastmasters, get involved in some way to improve your public speaking skills. It's something that we do all the time, whether it be in court, in interviews, in tours, and just public speaking opportunities. But it's something that you're going to have to be able to do if you want to be successful in the job, especially for interview processes. It's a huge part of promotions is being able to articulate responses. So definitely work on that because we can always get better at public speaking.
So after I graduated, I worked here, or I still currently kind of work here, but I worked here and I was doing the microbiology lab. And so I was helping teach that to like freshmen and sophomores. And one thing that I would like stress to them is I know studying is not fun and not all the times do we enjoy all of their classes, but like it's the small things that you take away from all of your classes that are going to help you later on in your career. So like for that class in particular, learning how to use a microscope, because I was like, I know you think right now this is the dumbest thing ever, but for those of you, because I did have a couple students that were interested in the forensic science program, I was like, later on, what you're doing right now is not going to help you out when you're in the DNA serology class and you're all of a sudden asking your professor, why can't I find things on my slide? So just appreciate things now. I know that's difficult, but like you only go through school once, maybe twice if you're, deciding to change things, but like you only are going through this one time. And so take advantage of all of your resources right here, right now, because later on you can definitely use those to your advantage and you'll appreciate it later on.
Yeah, and going off their thing of more opportunities is I think the RDP program here is really good for preparing you for success in the lab. Although the RDP is like, there's not a lot of opportunities for like talks or like any of the specific forensic fields, just being in the lab and having additional lab experience, just preparing solutions and things like that are super helpful knowing when you go into a lab, because when you get asked to start like making dilutions and you don't know what you're doing, it's like very stressful. So if you kind of already know, it helps.
I definitely have to agree with the social media and the thing. Just make sure you watch what you post. It's out there forever. If you delete it, it's not. It's there. Drugs. Be cognizant of that. Stuff like that. It's gonna come up in your background if you're gonna apply for any type of law enforcement. They're gonna ask you about every type of drug that's out there. And that background interview is no joke. The packet is like 20 pages long that you have to fill out. The polygraph is no joke. So just be careful what you do. Think about your actions and how they can affect your future. What else? I wish I kind of would have had a more like balance to like my junior senior year. I felt like I was really focused on studying and maybe didn't do as much of like the activities on campus and stuff like that. So definitely try to have like a good balance of academics and your social life as well. Take care of yourself and your mental health and all that. I think that's definitely something I would have done a little bit better my junior and senior years, that work, academic and social balance.
I would say, yeah, balance your time. I was more, since I didn't live here on campus, I just went to school and then went back home. I didn't really stay for any events or anything. So definitely be out there, have fun, but also know what you're doing. I would also say probably photography. That's one thing that my supervisor like hits everyone on there, like tell people like if people that are gonna graduate soon or are in the field, are in undergrad, tell them to like nail the photography. Because I know when I came in being volunteering with Mesa, that helped me a lot too. I think I pushed my photography training it was supposed to be like 4 weeks, and I finished it in like a week and a half or two. So I advanced my training way faster. So definitely, that's one thing I would say.
And so one more thing, kind of getting on the soapbox with them regarding the whole drugs thing. Just because it's legal doesn't mean it's okay. So there's state legal and then there's also federal legal. So just because it's like, for example, marijuana, because marijuana is legal here in the state, it's still illegal federally. And so that is something that they will still look at. So now this time I'd like to open it up to questions from anyone. Do you have any questions for our panel? It could be a general question or specific for any of the different disciplines.
She's gonna move the
Oh,
mic in case anybody has questions.
Okay.
Yeah,
How often would you say you guys are sports? I'll say it's definitely section specific, so I'm sure a toxicology person here can attest to how often they go, but for firearms, we probably go 5 to 10 times a year. We also have we call them defense interviews, so we have interviews with prosecution defense attorneys, and those happen probably a handful of times a month. But as far as, putting the suit on, going to formal court, 5 to 10 times a year per individual.
So I have the lovely pleasure of working in the alcohol unit, which is probably one of the heaviest litigated areas in the lab. So I get my defense interviews are a weekly thing. I probably have about 4 scheduled this week. And then as far as subpoenas go, I am the one individual still in my unit that has yet to go to court. However, I do have a subpoena next week. That's not my case, so that should be interesting for me to testify if it actually does go. But currently sitting in my little subpoena folder, I have probably about 6 subpoenas. So I get them all the time. How often you go? Probably, like you said, it's very dependent on the unit. So my unit probably about 2 to 3 times a month, maybe. They'll go, but then you have the drug toxicology side of the lab, where they go maybe a couple times a year. So it really just is dependent on which unit it is that you're in.
I'll just add that our tox lab with Phoenix, I feel like they go a dozen times a month, if not more. I feel like they're at court every single day. So they go all the time.
So I don't have to go to court, which is nice. Our certifying scientists go to court for us, so we just have to make sure everything looks good in the folder and they can use whatever they need from it. So I don't have to ever go to court.
So for us, it's very sporadic because a lot of the times, if you were assist on a homicide or something like that, which is you're pretty much just doing photos, the detective or the primary on the case is the one that can introduce your photos, so you don't have to go. I just had that where I didn't have to go. But I've been on for almost 4 years and I have yet to go to court. I've had a couple of defense interviews. I went 3 years without a defense interview, and then I had one, and then I had 3 in 1 week. So it really changes. I really couldn't tell you a time for the crime scene because there's 40 people in our unit, and it's just so sporadic, and it just really depends on the case. Yeah, very sporadic.
And if you just want to add to that, nobody likes going to court. Right? The attorneys try to stay out of court as much as possible. But sometimes they just can't. So then they will actually go through the trial. Other questions?
Do you guys have any tips for your background investigations and how to prepare for the panel interviews?
So the panel interviews for like being hired?
Yeah.
Okay. I'd say the best advice is a lot of times it's just like those general interview questions that you can pull up online. There's like a handful of websites that you can go through and, you know, you might not get asked that specific question, but having an idea of how you would answer certain topics and having an example for those topics. So kind of getting that mental repository of what those responses could be, you know, should you be asked those questions is a huge help of having an idea of what you might say for some of those classic, what are your strengths and weaknesses interview questions.
I would study the website of wherever you're applying to. So when I applied to City of Phoenix, I looked up at their, like these are called, like the motto. And then, yeah, mission statement. Same thing with the lab. So you want to know stuff like that. And then I went to the crime scene unit and I looked at like, you know, what the requirements were, and specifically for the job requirements of the crime scene specialist one, which is what is mostly open. So I'll look at that, I'll look at those job requirements and then the type of processing that they do, because then once you know, what kind of chemicals that section uses or anything like that or processing, you can kind of incorporate that into your interview as well. Just kind of helps with kind of to let them know that you did, you know your stuff and you know what that specific job uses.
Also, again, just apply everywhere because as you start to go through the process, it becomes a lot easier. My first interview with UPS was during COVID and we had to wear masks, and I kid you not, I like suffocated under that mask because I was breathing so heavily. But then the next time that I went in for my interview as an associate, it was a lot easier just because like it's kind of one of those things where you have to just get it out of the way first. And then you learn from, okay, I could have improved on this question. Or, you know, maybe next time I'll consider how to answer this question. And so then that practice too also just helps you out later on down the road because then your interviewing is going to get a lot better as you keep getting them.
Yeah, kind of going on that. I went to like 6 or 7 different interviews, and after each one, I kind of write down the questions that they asked, just because a lot of agencies ask similar or the same question. And another thing is if you're applying for a specific section, so I applied for a DNA section, they do ask like basic biology questions sometimes during the interview. So if you want to like freshen up on like a good way to describe DNA or something like that, might be helpful.
Okay, and then also what about the background check process? I don't know if you have any advice for that. I have a little bit.
Just follow the instructions. I think they all have to use black pen. When I first told that I used blue, and so I get to my background investigator, they're like, seriously, rolled one, black pen. I don't really have much advice other than just talk to your background investigator, be transparent, and some things that you're stressing about, they might not care at all about. So just be transparent, be forward. Hey, this is what it is. This is what happened. Here's how I explain it. And, you know, it is what it is. Just follow the process. I don't know.
Don't lie. Yeah, it's pretty much all it is don't lie, be transparent. And I think for us, now they changed it a couple years ago. We actually don't have to do polygraphs as crime scene. So that's one of the good things, but also don't take it personal because a lot of the background investigators, they're kind of like very dead set and like, you know, you're trying to be nice, like, hey, how are you? And they're like, so just don't take anything personal. And just don't lie. That's one of the biggest jobs, like parts of our job is integrity. So you don't want to lie or to work for the police department.
I can't tell you too, the background investigator is going to know more about you than your own family. They'll know all the secrets that you didn't want to tell your parents or your grandparents. And so I know when I went through mine, my background investigator told me it's normal to want to just drive off a bridge on your way home, but don't do it. But one piece of advice that I would have had is that a lot of these background packets, they want to know where you lived and who you lived with and their contact information, right? And so I would write that all down now. So if you have that roommate or that suite mate that you just never want to talk to again, just write down their information and hang on to it. So then when you do fill out that packet, you don't have to go through this huge round robin of trying to get their contact info and then needing to talk to them again. Any other questions?
Where are some good places to apply for internships, volunteer, other places you guys look at? Like, where did you guys apply for that you may not have gotten to summer leader interested in looking at? Yeah, I just did it with City of Phoenix. Now it's the first place I tried. So I'll let these guys.
I would say probably I volunteered with Mesa Police Department, and they have a great volunteer program where you're basically doing you're going through the exact same training as a full-time specialist, except for major crimes. It's like homicides. You won't go out. Once you finish the volunteer program, you're capable of going out to scenes like property crimes and processing them on your own. So that's a great program to get you into basically in the door, because you're 80% trained. So if you apply for a position there, they only have to like train you the rest 20%.
I applied for the office of the medical examiner. They're ones that kind of are open to anybody, and they have, I think it's a good start just because you're going to be exposed to dead bodies. And that's honestly, well, with crime scene work, at least field work, that's a huge part of our job. So if you can't handle seeing a dead body, unfortunately, then maybe the field work is not for you, or if you can't handle blood, a lot of, firearms are covered in blood and then tox skills with blood. So it's a good way to gauge what you can handle and what you can't. So it's a good start. At the office of the medical examiner, you can start anywhere. Like you can do admitting, you can do photos for exams, you can do investigations where you actually go out to the scenes. So you can kind of gauge what can't handle.
Okay, perfect. Any other questions? Well, I think that's our time for today. Our panel will probably hang out for a little bit if you have any one-on-one questions for them, but otherwise, thank you very much for coming.